Hello everyone, we are coming up onto the US election and I've realised I've not actually done a video about it. Mainly because I felt the energy for this year's election has been rather low, especially compared to 2016's. And because, well, in the UK, you've got a choice between Biden and Trump, and it's basically just been everyone saying Orange Man bad, while making very little arguments that are pro-Biden, so there's not been a lot to talk about, outside of silly Guardian articles that we go through on Laughing at the Guardian. But there was one thing that really caught my eye that I was not particularly happy about. Now, I'm here to talk about The Spectator. It is generally a right-wing magazine that I have a subscription to because I enjoy the analysis they bring forward and it has some of my favourite writers writing for it, such as Douglas Murray and Rod Liddell, and they also used to have James Delingpole, but he doesn't seem to write for it anymore. And over the past year or two, it's been growing massively and is one of the most popular magazines in the UK now. Probably because it gives quite unique analysis compared to the rest of the mainstream media. You've got Andrew Neil hosting their YouTube channel, and generally when it comes to COVID, they are more sceptical of the lockdown rather than the rest of the mainstream media who seem to be NPCing supporting it. So it was always good for this type of thing. But then came the US election. Kate Andrews, why this lifelong Republican has to vote for Biden. Written about 2 weeks ago. And when this came out, I thought I could do a whole video on it, but I decided to hold back just in case there was a bit more information or she changed her mind. And now we're 2 days before it, and she doesn't seem to have. So the thing with Kate Andrews is she used to work for the Institute of Economic Affairs, who are pretty right-wing when it comes to economics, but they also seem to be socially liberal, and this isn't the first time Kate has had a questionable opinion. For instance, she writes a lot about immigration and why mass immigration is good, actually. She was for 3 million Hong Kongers just ploughing their way into the UK, with seemingly little regard as to how that affects the local areas of Britain. Spoiler alert, it's not all been positive. But she is a free marketeer and generally right-wing on quite a few things. So it was surprising to see this particular article, especially since she wants lower taxes, a smaller state, less infringement on civil liberties, and has generally been against a lockdown. So let's see how she argues her case. For as long as I was old enough to think about politics, I've been a Republican. When my dad told me at age 6 that Bill Clinton had beaten Bob Dole, I'm told I cried. Okay, that happened. I don't remember this, but I do have vivid memories of running around St Andrews in my first year at university in a handmade McCain Palin t-shirt with no Bamba sketched in Sharpie on the back. I graduated, she sounds like a Prosecco Tory. I graduated into an internship on Mitt Romney's campaign, and when I moved to London, I became a spokesman of the Republicans overseas. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined for the first time I voted Democrat would be to put Barack Obama's vice president into the Oval Office. Yes, I'm voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Yeah, this really isn't convincing me that you've been a lifelong Republican. I mean, these are the worst Democratic candidates I think you've had in your lifetime, and you're still going to vote for them. Why? Because Orange Man bad? I mean, let's find out. I know that economic policies will make America poorer. Okay, especially as the economy tries to recover from COVID-19. The tax rises and the huge increase in spending, the kind that Senator Biden used to be wary of. And this is now the moderate wing of the party. Biden's... She knows that it goes further left. Biden's VP pick is further to the left. Harris's approach to governing would be even more top-down and interventionist. Her politics and mine, I'm a liberal in the British sense of the word, are about as far apart as one can get. Then why the fuck are you voting them? But what about the alternative? What about Donald Trump? The nastiness, unkindness, the racism and the misogyny, the way he always punches down rather than up. It's the antithesis, not just of my politics, but of the America I love. Wow. Really? Really? He's nasty. To whom? Yes, he likes a bit of banter. He is a bit abrasive. He's a bit unkind about things, yes. Well, a lot of people are unkind about America and him. Why, why would he not punch back? The racism? Citation, please. Misogyny. Look, if you're rich and powerful, they do let you grab you by the pussy. Okay, so, his supporters claim his remarks are taken out of context by his opponents in the media, that what he says is made to sound worse than what he meant. Well, that's only because that's exactly what they do. But we've all watched enough clips to know that the president needs no embellishment. Okay. Neither does Joe Biden. He's losing his mind. The only way to pretend he didn't propose a ban on Muslims coming to the US is to close your eyes and pretend you didn't read it on his campaign website. Okay, but we did just have 3 terrorist attacks in France last week. Doing something about that isn't the worst thing a president can do. The only way to claim he didn't mock a reporter's physical disability is to look away and pretend it never happened. I know what clip you're talking about, Kate. I don't care. You're literally having to bring up not his policy, but the way he acts. And yes, he has done things that are offensive. Yes, well, unfortunately, every time Biden opens his mouth, it's like watching someone commit elderly abuse, and I find that offensive as well. Come on, you need better arguments than this. Literally, I cannot believe someone would say, oh, I know that I'm basically voting for my mortal enemy, but at least they're not Orange Man. I don't pay for a Spectator subscription so that I can be told that Kate Andrews isn't using her brain. That is literally what she is telling me there. She is saying, I have full intuition, here are half-arsed arguments, I hope Biden and Harris win, despite the fact they're going to ruin America. You're literally going to ruin America because Donald Trump is rude sometimes. Right, come on, let's have some proper arguments now, Kate. After 8 lackluster years under President Obama, it felt as if shift was coming. Surely, I had my personal favourites in the lineup for Republican candidates, the ones with the libertarian streak. Alright, fair enough. Any in particular? But at the start of the election season, you would have struggled to find an expat more excited to make the case abroad for the GOP candidate. My enthusiasm fell away when Trump called Mexicans rapists. It's not what he did, Kate. You should know that's not what he did. What he did was say they are not sending their best, they are sending over rapists, which is true. Some of the Mexicans that have come over are rapists, sent over, gangs, human traffickers, things like that. And he finished that thought off by saying, and some are very fine people. So he's not just calling Mexicans rapists. You're an idiot. This was unforgivable. Not that he has ever asked for forgiveness. Well, it's because he didn't do anything wrong. The party of Ronald Reagan didn't demonize migrants in this way, but Trump did. In the end, a major shift did come, but I didn't take part. Well, thank God for your virtue signaling, because you've gone so mental with it, now America might die. I mean, I literally can't believe she can't see past the mainstream media's bullshit about Trump. I literally cannot believe she can't see past it, and that she can't see past it so much that instead of voting Donald Trump, who would lower the taxes, help with the economic recovery, and put in quite a lot of policies she actually wants, she's going with Biden-Harris because they're nice people. I mean, they are on the surface anyway. But she literally says 8 lackluster years of Obama. She's voting in the continuity candidate for that? Are you out of your mind? Right, come on, Kate, let's have something sensible. This isn't to say I begrudge Trump voters. Well, that's good. The vitriol thrown at them often mirrors how the president treats his critics, and his supporters are right to point to his policy successes. So why don't you do that, Kate? Trump's tax reforms have resulted in companies, big and small, hiking wages and dishing out bonuses to American workers. Thank you, capitalism. It's not a terrible surprise to us free market lot, but his combination of lower taxes and light touch regulation produced a booming economy before the virus hit, which is very true. It's almost like you should vote for him. Last year saw a spectacular 6.8% rise in household median income, the highest increase since records began. His less interventionist stance on the world stage has saved countless lives abroad. The First Step Act has done more to reform criminal justice and help non-violent offenders rehabilitate than any Republican or Democrat policy in years. Wow, this sounds like he's the perfect guy to vote for, Kate. I think you should vote for him. In this sense, the president has been good for America, and I've asked myself many times if I can separate the man from his words. Wow, hold my nose and cast my vote for the continuation of these policies. The answer is always no. Oh, great. Because what is at stake is bigger than the economy, bigger than any piece of legislation that could cross the president's desk. Of course, when it comes to immigration, Kate, the only thing that matters there is the economy, not the local culture or anything like that. The social fabric of America... Oh, shut the fuck up. The social fabric of America is coming undone, as if it unravels much more. I fear it won't be possible to stitch it back together. Wow. Trump's the one doing that. Trump's the one doing that. Have you seen what's going on in the Democrat cities, Kate? Have you seen they are burning the American flag in most of your American cities? And guess what? They're not Trump supporters. They're not the. It's not Trump undoing social fabric. It is the Democrats, their governors, their cities. It is Antifa. Please get your head on straight, love. My lord, listen to this sobby paragraph. I've never felt further away from my home country than I did this summer, sitting in my London flat during lockdown watching on TV as the divisions that had been stoked in American society for years reached breaking point. Trump thrives on chaos and ego. After the killing of George Floyd, he quickly made the protests and the riots about him personally. Well, that's only because a lot of them do seem to coincide with wanting Trump out of office. As if he were the victim of police brutality. Well, no, he's a victim of political brutality, really. Or as if setting fires to shops and cars was more an attack on him than on Americans watching their businesses and possessions burn to the ground. No, I think he actually really feels for the Americans that are suffering because of these riots. I really do think he feels bad for these people, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, he only does it for votes. Doesn't matter, it still means he's going to help him. Like, he's getting those votes to help these Americans. Trump hasn't been alone in fostering instability. Well, at least you admit that. Many factions of the Democratic Party never accepted that he won in 2016 election fairly and tried to use every tool they could to overturn the result. Wow. Yeah, it's like he is a victim of the political body. But Trump has encouraged everyone to meet him at the basest level. Lauren Witzke, a Republican candidate for the Senate, shared just days ago her belief that the most third-world migrants cannot assimilate into civil societies. Based. As if it were now socially acceptable way to speak about other human beings in America. Ms. Witzke is responsible for her own words, but the president has created an atmosphere in which people feel emboldened to share these beliefs. Wow! She's got a problem with someone sharing a belief. Where's your red-blooded Americanism, Ms. Kate Andrews? I encourage people to share what they believe. And what I can't believe you're also doing is blaming President Trump for something that someone else said. I mean, you say, oh, this isn't Trump's fault, but, I kind of want to blame Trump. What are you talking about, Kate? You're smarter than this. Alright, let's finish this off. There is nothing intelligent said here as far as I can tell. This is the culture that arises when a nation's leader never embraces humility, compromise, or anything remotely resembling a statesman-like demeanour. Okay. I'm sorry, but you've just praised that he's had one of the best economic presidencies, well, in your lifetime from the sounds of it, but, oh, again, he's rude, therefore no vote for him. It's amazing what people will throw away because someone doesn't act the way they think they should. The first presidential debate reminded me once again that Trump has not bothered to learn any of these lessons. The interrupting, yelling, and spin were bad enough, but the dismissal of Beau Biden when the former vice president was paying tribute to his late son was one of Trump's most inhumane moments to date. It's hard to imagine how a person could stoop much lower, yet I can't help but think that, given 4 more years, Trump wouldn't hesitate to show us. Again, he dismissed Biden's dead son. Yeah, it's rude. Yeah, it's not great. You're going to destroy America over that, though? I don't know. I think I'd rather take Trump being dismissive prick than have the Democrats' agenda put in. In 2016, I broke with the Republican Party for the first time and supported a Libertarian candidate. I vote in a solidly Democratic state, so I had the luxury of casting a protest vote against the system that made Americans choose between 2 members of the New York elite. Really? You're going to go on about the elite? The least popular presidential candidate in history, both of whom acted as though becoming president was their birthright rather than the highest privilege. I don't think that's how Trump was acting, to be honest. But this time I'm protesting by joining the other side. Wow, well done. I'm going to protest by burning down America. There is a candidate in this race who, while far from perfect, has a history of reaching across the aisle. He has based his campaign on reuniting the nation and, perhaps most importantly in this election cycle, has reminded us that it's okay to apologise now and again. America does not have a monarchy. The president is our head of state and our moral compass. Trump has proven time and time again that he is unfit for these roles. I like to believe a Republican leader is waiting around the corner to restore the values and principles that once made the party great. Until then, I'm happy for the Oval Office to be filled by someone who has a different vision for America than I have, but who loves the country and what it stands for nevertheless. Okay, Kate, you've gone mad. I don't think you wrote this. Kate, if anything else, just look at the heroes that we now have for the Democrats. George Floyd, a criminal. He pointed a gun at a pregnant woman. He tried to sell off counterfeit money to try and buy something from a store, and that's what he got arrested for, while he was on a fentanyl high. Like, if you think that's a better representation of what America should be than Trump being rude, I don't know what to say to you. No one on Trump's side thinks he is a saint. The worst thing you can say is that they meme him for 40k memes. Oh, wow, that's so much worse than literally putting a halo around George Floyd, who I can guarantee will not be in heaven at this point. But hey, at least Joe Biden looks like a friendly uncle, am I right? So friendly, in fact, that he's probably there now sniffing his nieces. Like, honestly, if we're just going after character, and who has the better character for president, then quite frankly, America deserves to fall to the ground. Intelligent people, I don't think, vote people based on personality. I think they do it more on policy and principle and things like that. And if your principle is Trump is a bit rude and I believe the media narrative about him, then yeah, fine. Vote to ruin your own country. I'm sure that's a great idea, Kate. Honestly, with articles like this, I don't know why I'd keep my subscription up. But it gets worse. Lionel Shriver made one. I'm voting to make America boring again. I just can't believe it. So just to make things very, very, very clear, I have seen Lionel Shriver at a live Spectator event. If you want to see it, link as usual is in the description, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown on it. She was literally talking to Douglas Murray about the madness of crowds. And so she clearly understands the problem with leftists, the problem with the postmodern bullshit that we all see from day to day, and why things like Black History Month and things like that are a terrible idea. And then for some goddamn reason, Trump, who is railing against this directly by getting rid of critical race theory in the federal government, and who seems to understand that the Democrats actually support this, as she should herself, she's voting against it. She's voting for the crocodile in hopes, I guess, that it doesn't bite her, or I guess in hopes that it might be a bit less rude than living in Trump's world. This is crazy. Alright, let's just get into this, because this is getting ridiculous. So, I just spent £2.50 in postage to bring about one of the last things I want. Specifically, the next to last thing I want. If the polls are right, and how should I know, my abstenee ballots will help leave Trump behind as a one-term historical aberration and install a US president, an elderly Democratic lifer whose cognitive capabilities remain uncertain. Many an ambivalent Biden voter will share my concerns about his victory. So she's literally has concerns about Joe Biden winning. And yet she's doing what she can to help. Although not everything, it appears that she's not actually voting for him, but she isn't voting for Trump either. So let's have a look at some of her concerns. COVID. Who is that masked man? Biden often flaunts his face coverings, even when nowhere near another human being. While his party has embraced the mask as a badge of nobility, righteousness and partisan unity, i.e. virtue signalling, obliging computer modelers now post that more than 100,000 COVID deaths could be prevented if 95% of Americans always wore masks. These dubious figures can't possibly be substantiated. Due to ethics concerns and logistical challenges, no large controlled study on how well masks protect others from infection has ever been conducted. So the model's inputs must have assumed the conclusions, that's right, next door to, if you will, barefaced lying. Yet Democrats' faith in the mask is absolute. Horribly, a national mask mandate could be in the offering, perhaps in place for years. Worse, Democrats are in love with lockdowns. Still more chloroforming of the US economy would be catastrophic. Catastrophic. And she's not voting against this. So she seems to be for civil liberties and for good economic, right-wing economic policy, I should say. Yet she's not voting for that. So, come hither immigration. The Biden plan for securing our values as a nation of immigrants overwhelmingly stresses welcome wagon over enforcement. Here's a roadmap to citizenship for illegal immigrants translates as amnesty. Even Trump hasn't significantly staunched rampant violation of American immigration laws, and historically high levels of deportation is one of Obama's policies that Biden is likely to dump. The handful of Democrats like me who advocate... You're a Democrat? who advocates stemming illegal immigration while encouraging more high-skilled legal immigration, long ago lost out to the de facto open borders crowd. Time to finally learn Spanish. I don't understand how you can openly say that you think America is going to be destroyed like this and still not try and vote against it. I mean, she's not even voting for third party. At least that's better than not voting at all if you're trying to stop this, I mean. Next on her concerns is the Supreme Court packing. Biden has refused to rule it out. Now, I'm pro-choice. Nevertheless, court packing is the stuff of banana republics and demagogues. As we like to say now, not good luck. Okay. Incontinent spending. According to analysts at the Wharton School, Biden's policies would add $5.4 trillion to federal spending over 10 years, twice the size of Hillary Clinton's. Biden's prospective budget entails the largest proposed spending increase by a presidential nominee since George McGovern, says a Wharton economist. And the promised spree doesn't include those inevitable stimulus packages to drag the states out of its lockdown black hole. More made-up, funny money, more debt, more house of cards, structural instability. Well, you're not trying to stop it, are you? Amazingly, this still isn't enough to get her to vote against this, so next is higher taxes. Trump's tax reform was hasty, messy, and for high-tax Democrat states, spiteful. But cutting the corporate rate was economically savvy. Biden will bung it right back up. As for his promise not to raise tax on anyone earning less than $400,000, balderdash. Whenever legislators get down to the nitty-gritty, thresholds plummet, thereby reaming the middle class, because otherwise tax hikes just don't raise enough revenue. Probably because people like 50 Cent move out of New York. Next, it's the unleashing of the hard left. Biden won the nomination as a centrist, but his new little friend Bernie is whispering in his ear, and among the Democratic Party elite, the wokesters are ascendant. Encroaching physical frailty readily crumbles the backbone. How effectively will Biden hold the line against the lunatics on his own side? When in the last debate he genuflected towards systemic racism, my heart fell. If Biden is inaugurated in January, Trump's unusually sane directive that federal agencies not to promote critical race theory might not last beyond Valentine's Day. And you're not voting to keep it in. Well, it's all bad so far, but then I think she saved the best till last here. President Harris. Given Biden's age and the likelihood that he doesn't complete a first term is uncomfortably high, yet Kamala generated so little enthusiasm during her primary campaign that she had to drop out before anyone got a chance not to vote for her. I doubt I'm alone here. She is a superior, snide and scornful manner that grates. Conspicuously picked for VP to tick the right identity boxes, she's already demonstrated eagerness to play the divisive race card even on Biden himself. Arguably immaterial, sure, but I can't stand the sound of her voice. Okay. Man, we're going on about Trump being a rude person, and Lionel, you're being rude about a minority's voice? I mean, we can't have any of that. Kate Andrews could never vote for you for that. Alright, now, let's get into why she voted Biden then. If the prospect of a Biden administration fills me with such foreboding, why did I just vote for the guy? I'll spare you the standard foam-at-the-mouth diatribe about Trump being a threat to democracy itself and keep it short. The man's incompetent. You just went on about how he was economically savvy, but okay. And Biden has upsides. His healthcare plan beats no healthcare plan. Debatable. A president who has occasional verbal lapses beats a president who can't talk at all. What? Biden literally struggles to know where he is half the time. Biden might halt the attrition of qualified civil servants from every branch of the government while improving his country's international standing, at least from knee-high to mid-thigh. Biden's very dullness could restore a sense of order rather than build back better. His slogan might more persuasively have run, "Make America boring again." Great. Cherry on top, returning Trump to a fading reality TV star would deprive the far left of their most beloved punching bag. For this, well, if they've not got Trump, you do realise that you're one of the next targets, Lionel. For this ultimate emblem of evil and stupidity has proven the left's most potent recruiting tool. Are you kidding? Really? Do you think so? A lot of people who went to the left were already leftists 4 years ago. I don't think many people have gone left because of him at all. Believe me, if the Donald loses, progressives will grievously miss that fat orange face. I think that is wishful thinking, Lionel. I think they will only be emboldened because they ended up finding mush. And what happens when they find mush? They push the bayonet in harder. And you're behind that mush, I'm afraid. Right, let's finish this off. On my absentee ballot, I did do something mischievous. Whimsically, I voted for the wrong party for Congress, the only Republican I've ever voted for. Although my eccentric gesture won't matter, my New York district is fated for Democrat. It's just that I don't fancy the same party completely controlling both the legislature and the White House, thus being free to do whatever they please. I prefer a constraining influence at play. Should the Democrats take the Senate, I'll be uneasy. Well, okay, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. You don't like Democrats because of all the leftist bullshit that they keep pulling. You don't like that at all. Yet you will still vote them in for the presidency, but you think somehow the Senate will stop that. Even though you know that New York is getting a Democrat senator. I don't understand your logic. But hey, I'm bound to feel glum in any event, because my only options are getting pretty depressed and getting suicidally depressed. I have no champagne chilling for 3rd of November, well I do, even though I presently expect to win. Yeah, I do think it's crucial to get an erratic, inflammatory, poorly informed buffoon who never reads anything out of the Oval Office. What, despite all the good he's done for America, are you joking? But I've no rosy illusions about a Biden presidency, so rather than bubbly, I think vodka neat. Cold, make that a double. But it's like a Zoomer meme. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm being really depressed. Oh, I know the world's going to be terrible. And then it's just like, I'm going to vote for all these terrible things that I know that the Democrats do and that I know Joe Biden's going to put in. Because I don't want Trump because Orange Man bad. Literally, that's all I've read in The Spectator. I don't buy The Spectator because I want to read Orange Man bad. I go there for intelligent discourse. And it seems for the past 2 weeks, these 2 articles missed the bloody mark. Alright, so now that we've gone through all the, quite frankly, leftist arguments from what I thought were right-wingers, here's just something I feel I have to say. Spectator, please start being right-wing again. If you go down this rabbit hole, you'll go down the slippery slope to more left-wing mainstream media things. And that's not what people came to the Spectator for. They came here for an alternative view on things, and it's quite frankly the only place you could get a right-wing perspective on current events and analysis and things like that. But of your 2 American writers who write for the Spectator regularly, if they're both voting Democrat, and they're both giving leftist reasons for voting Democrat, despite the fact they're like, oh, yeah, I don't like the left-wing agenda they're bringing in, but I'm going to vote for it, because Orange Man bad. If they start doing that, like, my God, maybe you should look for Americans who are actually right-wing and Republican. And they don't even have to simp for Donald Trump. They just have to be better writers than this garbage I've just gone through. Because this was painful to go through. Because I did respect these women. Did. I mean, Lionel Shriver's still okay. But Kate Andrews has gone right off the rails. I'm just fed up of Prosecco Tories. I'm fed up with these right-wingers, quote-unquote, who end up loving Blair, end up simping for Biden. All because, oh, Trump man bad. Oh, he said rude things at one time. Oh, remember this bullshit from the mainstream media? Yeah, I believe that. No, we can't have this. And these people are voting Biden. So, honestly, if you're American and you think Donald Trump's in trouble of winning, I'd get off your arse and vote this coming election. Because seriously, people are voting for Biden for stupid reasons such as this. And he is ahead in the polls, assuming you believe the polls. And assuming they're accurate, etc., etc., which I know they weren't last time, don't get me wrong, but I really don't think it's a good idea to rest on your laurels. Do what you can to help Trump win if you are that way inclined, because the last thing I want to see is America start burning some more. I do. It's one of the few places in the world I would think about emigrating to, obviously if they'll have me, and I do not plan to emigrate somewhere that is full of ashes. And I do think that's a really good possibility, because, as James Lindsay has tweeted out, the Biden plan to build back better by advancing racial equality across the American economy. You know, he's highlighted strengthening the Federal Reserve's focus on racial economic gaps, i.e. put in racial socialism. And here's an example of one of the bills to amend the Federal Reserve Act to add additional demographic reporting requirements to modify the goals of the Federal Reserve System and for other purposes. So the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Open Market Committee shall exercise all duties and functions in a manner that fosters the elimination of disparities across racial and ethnic groups with respect to employment, income, wealth, and access to affordable credit, including actions to carry out monetary policy regulation and supervision of banks, thrifts, blah, 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 operation of payment systems, implementation of the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, enforcement of fair lending laws, and community development functions. I mean, this just looks like socialism. And what happens to socialist countries? Nothing good. Nothing good at all. I do not care how virtuous you think you are. I don't care how well you think you are helping the black man. This policy will ruin America because it is centralized planning of the economy. That never goes well. It doesn't go well with the NHS. It doesn't go well with the track and trace system that our UK government tried to bring out recently. Allow for a competitive society. Charity fills the gaps. The government should be there for no other reason than to enforce your basic human rights. And even Kamala Harris herself put out a video that if I saw my government putting out, I would absolutely crap my pants.
So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests, oh, everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place.
Yes, I agree. Some people have to work harder than others. Working class people, for example, are more disadvantaged than middle class people. Exactly why this is an injustice is still something that I do not completely understand, and no communist seems to give me a decent answer for. Does that mean that we should let people who are dying out in the streets because they can't get anywhere die? No, of course not. This is why I support charities. This is why I give to charities with my own disposable income, because there's more needy people out there than I.
So if we're all getting the same amount, but you started out back there and I started out over here, we could get the same amount, but you're still going to be that far back behind me.
It's fucking irrelevant how far behind you are. It doesn't matter where you started from either. The difference in the income gap doesn't make a difference to me. I don't care how much poorer you started out on. You don't just deserve a stepping stool because you are short. You still have to put labour in to get one or make one yourself.
It's about giving people the resources and the support they need so that everyone can be on equal footing and then compete on equal footing.
I'll be honest, 3-4 years ago, this was probably my thinking. I did think like this. I thought, oh, why can't we have equality of opportunity like this? Why can't everyone start with a, basic amount that they can then work up from? And if they go down from it, oh, well, we'll start them back up again. Well, the problem with that is, and the problem with it is, actually, as it turns out, is that you just incentivize people to get to that basic line and stay there, especially if it's above a living standard. And even if it is, people will do as little as possible to stay above it. And this makes negative feedback loops. We have to keep these incentives positive. If people know they've only got one chance in life to succeed, which more than likely they do, they are going to try their best to make the best decisions they can. If the government just gives out gibs, as this video is pointing out that it should do, all you do is get welfare gibbers who do nothing but laze around, commit crime, and do drugs all day. They're just not productive. And if you're not productive, I don't understand why you should get given free stuff, but that's what these people think.
Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
No, it doesn't, because you're assuming that people want to climb that mountain, which they don't necessarily want to do. They might just be fine with where you raise them up to in the first place, which if you do that, guess what? You're incentivizing people to just stay there. Whereas if they actually started climbing, because, they could have just climbed up that little part on the left. They could have just climbed up that and then climbed up the rope. But no, they didn't even try and do that. They were like, oh no, I need to have a solution given to me by the ground literally raising up for me. Such a stupid way to think of the world. I can't believe people do it, but as I say, I used to think like this, so I don't blame them. Please, for the love of God, don't let this madness take over. Don't let them impose their racial socialism. It will not help America. It will more than likely ruin it. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching. Go out and vote if you're American. And until next time, goodbye.